Carl and Lou here from Brrraaains A Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and it's Freddy's Nightmares, an episodic recap up to episode number 16, Cabin Fever, which comes with a cool thing that we don't get much of overall in the show. It's directed by Robert Englund himself. Freddy Krueger himself has directed this episode, and in a way it shows in one segment.
Yeah.
In a way it doesn't, because he's still kind of, I guess, handcuffed. But no doubt was a lot of TV-related rules to the show, so you can only ever go so far. Yeah. I'd say segment one of this perhaps is some of the more horror elements that we've seen in the show up to this point. Not like, not graphic scenes or anything like that, but there's definitely a few more deaths and a bit more makeup and blood here and there and so on. And that felt very Nightmare on Elm Street, whereas the second segment is kind of more just what we're used to. Yeah. But we'll get to that in a bit. This is, of course, an episode as well written by Rhett Topham. So, yes, this is definitely a tale of two segments that generally, while they do fit together, vary wildly in quality in regards to enjoyment. We went into this one after having a bit of a break and not really watching anything. And this first segment, it was quite strong, giving off those, as I said, Nightmare on Elm Street vibes. Certainly more horror than we're used to up to this point. Particularly when you're watching the show, episode after episode, segment after segment. Because you got to see it that way as well. You don't just watch one episode, you're watching two stories, and the links are sometimes so small they might as well be two complete separate things. So when you're up to like episode 16, you're talking, what's that, 26, that's 32 32 episodes, so to speak. It's quite a slog.
I think consistency is always a problem.
Consistency is the show's biggest problem. Like, it can be, there's never anything that I think is outstandingly brilliant, like, wow, everyone should see that, but the variety, like, it's not like, oh, this is great, this is great, not good. And so it's like that, basically. In this first segment, Brett Cullen, that's the actor, plays Carl. Yes, my namesake. Taking a flight that he's basically not very comfortable with. I initially thought, we're going to get the old Twilight Zone here, We do kind of get a jokey hint to that as well. You know, after you have your opening first couple of minutes, you kind of cut to Freddy doing a thing, normally in his boiler room, making really bad puns. When this, he's on the wing of the plane, ripping out wires, that whole thing. So Carl doesn't like flying, and this is confusing. His friend or his girlfriend, who's a stewardess, a flight attendant. Now, it never makes it clear what their relationship is, but she seems quite upset. No, he can't be a frequent flyer. He's scared of flying. So it's like, and the only reason he's flying is because he's got, obviously his father passed away, and he's basically taken over the business, and he needs. And now we did say at the time, why would you even fly? Like, just take a train or whatever, or drive and so on, that kind of thing. But her role, and this is Sue, the stewardess, the flight attendant. Leslie Dean plays the character. It's never made clear what her relationship is with him, and it's annoying because she's a major part of the second segment. Oh, she is the star of the second segment. And it would have been nicer to understand certain things. I initially thought girlfriend because, she's very flirty. She's very upset at the end and stuff like that.
She knows him.
She knows him well enough.
Problems and asked about his dad and stuff.
Yeah, and there's no. Yeah, so I think I just presumed girlfriend. Anyway, Carl's a businessman who's just basically inherited his dead father's assets. His father's passed away, and Carl has taken over the business. A business that we find out basically made plane parts, that sort of stuff. It's suggested throughout the episode, through conversations and some of the dream sequences, that perhaps his father's business, to save money, may have cut some corners here and there.
So it wasn't as safe as you'd want an airline to be.
Yeah, like that kind of thing. It's kind of hinted at as throughout, but never made explicitly clear. And because a lot of it comes in dream sequences as well, like when he's speaking to his father and things like that. It's to say it's Freddy fucking with him, really, more than anything else.
No, isn't there a flashback where kids say, I flew on this...
Yeah, but what we're seeing is it's all still in the dream sequences. It doesn't necessarily mean it's...
Oh, okay, I thought it...
Like, no, I mean, it never makes it explicitly clear. That's all I'm saying. You can only go... The problem with this episode, the problem with the show overall, is it's always hard to know what's real and what's not.
Yeah, because sometimes you kind of get the... When they go asleep, okay, this is definitely not real. Then they come... when they've come back and forth... But some of them you just don't. What are we doing? Are we real? Are we not
Yeah,
real?
it can be very, very difficult, particularly when an episode predominantly focuses on dreams, because of course Carl falls asleep. He takes some pills, and I'm going to say they kind of like
calming, sleeping.
Yeah, like potentially muscle relaxants, things like that, and so on. And he kind of begins to dream / I guess hallucinate a series of different events related to the plane crashing, everyone dying, and even his father, an actor who overacts to say the least. And basically everything that could go wrong with a plane seems to happen bit by bit, you know, like rats in the wiring and things like that.
And
terrorists, of course. Can't forget about the terrorists, the eco-terrorists as well. Eco-terrorists who just start shooting up the plane and somehow don't punch a hole in like the side of it, and
felt quite modern actually, having an eco-terrorist.
It was quite cool actually. It's quite funny the way they act. They got Uzis and things like that. We should say most of this episode takes place in one sort of little cabin area of a plane.
It's
and yeah, it's one of those where it's like it's so obviously a set.
Yeah, I would have said like if you're going to do plyboard, kind of look like curve it a bit so it's got that curved shape of a airplane.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the interior of a plane. It's a bit square. Yeah, it really is.
In a room, so yeah.
During this trip as well, he also talks to a man who's sitting near to him as well, who used to work for his father, got fired for basically drinking on the job, but also suggests, and that's where we get some of those things, suggest that he might know some dark secrets about the company. And it ends in I think a fairly decent way. The dreams get more and more intense. It's sort of implying that the plane's going to hell, the old people get on and they're already dead, and it's like a plane journey to the afterlife and things like that. But basically, he just dies in his seat. No real explanation, heart failure, fear, who knows what it is, and so on. But he sort of dies in his seat. And we do get some bad acting there from Sue, and she's all like, like that kind of thing. Yeah. But overall, I think this segment was quite strong. We were quite enjoying it. We were quite invested in it. It was quite fun. Which is something, again, the show isn't always very good at doing. Fun. And this one felt fun because it was fast-paced, jumping from one to another and another and another and so on. And it felt like this was one where it felt like Freddy Krueger, while not actively involved, might have been like, you know, the puppet master, as it were. And I think it shows that England has some pretty good directing chops.
Definitely. And I think that's the whole thing with this whole series as well, is if you've not got the budget for sets and actors as well, keep it snappy, because the longer you draw things out, the more your attention's brought to the fact that it is like very cheaply done.
Yeah.
But I say like we sat up and went, oh, Robert Englund's directing this, so that was a sign of like, oh, something different, which I think we liked in this first part. It
was, and it kind of meant that there was excitement for the second segment, but unfortunately this one is dull as dishwater. Really doesn't make much sense. It just isn't very good. It concerns and focuses on Sue, played by Leslie Dean, as previously said. And it seems to be set shortly after Carl's funeral, that she seemingly made the choice not to go, which is where I think that confusion and so on. And I wanted to put it down to grief, particularly as she's now seemingly a bit of a drunk, without a lot of sense about her, trying to get more drinks at a pilot bar, being too drunk, sent away by a barman that appears to know her well enough, which means she frequents it. But then I was like, well, no, that means she kind of had that couldn't be a couple of weeks. It's not a new thing, her drinking problem. Yeah. She does play a drunk quite good. Yeah. She does. And she ends up meeting a man at the bar. This is the man who was talking to Carl on the plane. Yeah. So there's another connection there. And when I said not sense, he basically agrees to go back to his remote cabin in the woods somewhere.
Complete stranger.
Complete stranger. Obviously, it's a terrible idea. But to be fair, the man is actually a bit of a gent overall. A little weird, a little unusual, but not dangerous. No. He doesn't come across dangerous. He treats her right and so on. And in fact, he doesn't actually take advantage of her state and even makes her a nice breakfast the next morning when she's a bit hungover and stuff like that. So it's all okay. But you can't, obviously, this is the show. The problem is like, this takes a while. Like, this is the first 5 odd minutes of this segment. Yeah, and you're like, okay, you don't have long. Let's get to it. Keep it snappy. Keep it interesting. And then it all kind of gets messy because our dream sequences are very, very messy. And what happens doesn't make a ton of sense in regards to what's real and what's not. Effectively, it can be summed up as that she finds out he kidnaps flight attendants, other flight attendants, female flight attendants, and basically he's created his own garish room with bodies sort of sitting there as if it's like a flight thing. Yeah. There's one trapped in the freezer. Then she ends up escaping, running away, and running into some rednecks, basically, who hunt her, who then later turn out to be in league with the man, as there is some sort of cult thing.
Yeah.
And it was just a bit like, wait, what?
I think maybe having something that she was wearing in dreams and in real would have been better. So like her flight attendant uniform, I know, being slightly skewiff when she's dreaming. Like, I don't know.
Something that makes it obvious.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
Well,
not so
obvious,
much that I want to be able to differentiate, because we've seen segments and episodes where it can be made clear, or not necessarily we need to know the dream, but how that ties into the overall thing. And I think segment 1's a good example of that. Obviously, everything outlandish was dreams, but it played out in an order that was like to death. Do you see what I mean? Whereas this doesn't. Yeah. And she'll wake up and it'll all be okay, and then she'll find out and then apparently she'll look somewhere else and find something new. And then at the end, it's like, were her dreams more premonition based than anything?
Yeah.
It seems to imply that because like I thought it was going to be the fact she wakes from a dream, she runs away in fear because she thinks like he is a murderer or killer and all that, and he's not. And that's when she gets hit by the car. Yeah. The same one that in a dream the hunter was driving with the deer on them. Do you see what I mean? Like all of that would have made more sense, but that's not how it plays out. No. The biggest issue with the second part, though, is that, and I don't even want to talk about it too long because it's dull. It's dull. That's what it is. It never really gets going. It's slow moving. It's slow paced. And then it's just like, oh, she's running for the woods. She's running for it. And then we get to the redneck bit. That really stops it, halts it in its tracks again. And the end is very basic. As I said, her nightmares effectively come true. That's not something the show often does. So I don't always love that. Because it's like, well, that's more premonition-based rather than dream-based. Yeah. I like the idea of the dreams influencing her to make her then end up in an accident or this, that, whatever, and so on. So it's dull. I don't like the second segment. No, I didn't. It was disappointing. Yeah. And it's, there we go. There's that consistency. 2 segments. One that I think is one of the upper echelons of segments, and one that is in the lower echelons of segments. And then you end up with, a middle-of-the-road episode because of it? Because it makes it hard to recommend Cabin Fever.
Yeah, because you've got that
disparity.
Yeah.
All we can say is maybe watch the first segment. I mean, but then if you're going to do that, you might as well watch the second, at least see how that plays out. Yeah. But, there you go. That is episode 16 of Freddy's Nightmares, Cabin Fever. What do you reckon? You got any thoughts and you know what to do? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at gbhbl. Just search for gbhbl and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.